allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome everybody. 1 o'clock, regular session, Southampton Town Board of Trustees, beautiful town hall. Ask the Secretary Treasurer to handle the roll call, please.
William Parrish is going to be absent today. Ann Walker.
Here.
Edward J. Warner Jr.
Present.
William Pell, President. Scott M. Horwitz, President.
And present.
We ready to go?
We're ready to go, okay. Just for informational purposes, our next meeting will be Monday, March 20th, 2023, here at 9:30 a.m. work session, followed by the March 20th, 2023, 1 p.m. regular session. We did have some communications that have come in.
Do you just want to give a nutshell of this communication?
This was relative to a job well done, I believe, to the Marine Maintenance Department.
Yep.
We have a good group of folks that work very hard out there for people of the town and the trustees, and they put together a beat-up landing, I guess, stairway. That, you know, the weather's been pretty bad, storm surges and heavy waves and wind, and they did a great job, and it was recognized by one of the citizens in the community, which is always nice. You know, people say a lot of these jobs are thankless jobs, and people don't say thank you. Although I do believe they do appreciate that, and there's something to be said also to be an unsung hero as well. So thank you to the guys, and it's our pleasure, all of us serving the community in
Yes.
whatever capacity that you're at.
They work very hard, just as the ladies in the office. They're out in front of us, the maintenance crew, and also the people in our office. They make us all look very good.
Yeah. they
Once
do.
again, thank you.
And you can't forget the person that really makes us look good, and that's Charles Certain, CTV.
Yes.
Without Charles, obviously,
No one sees us.
no. And there's a lot of other backup behind the scene that goes on throughout various different departments located here in Town Hall that also help support the trustees in doing the good work of the people here. So it takes a collaboration of a great many people to make it all go in reality.
Yeah, thanks to everybody.
And
We all do appreciate it.
we do. And partners out there in the community. I know we got Dr. Gobler here and Cornell here, and, you know, we work with everybody to try and make it all go. So, that being said, let's move right on to our discussions. We do have a Sag Pond PowerPoint presentation, right? Trustee Welker?
We do, yes. Dr. Gobler, would you?
To Charles to pull it up. So
You want to approach the podium, or you want to sit here with the board, whatever you're more comfortable at?
I
Whatever.
think here, I'm most comfortable here.
Very good.
Okay. Dr. Christopher Gobler.
Give me a second.
Okay.
We'll give him a second. Maybe we can,
Want to do Cornell then?
Do you want to just talk a little bit about
you got
what
it?
you're?
We got it.
It's
You're good.
coming.
Yeah, and I can just give the background that I've been working with the trustees and Peconic Land Trust on Sagaponic Pond since, well, probably for a decade, frankly, but this focused and concentrated project for the last 4 years or so. And it's had a multi-focus approach. It's been looking at what's going on in the system, so water quality. It's been looking at what are the sources of nitrogen pollution to the pond, and then looking at the feasibility of oysters being grown in the pond. I mean, as you're well aware, Mecox is probably the most productive oyster population on the South Shore of Long Island. And it's got, just like Sag Pond, the temporary open/closed nature. Been doing some work at East Hampton, Georgia Pond. The oyster's doing well there too, so why not look at Sag Pond as well? And so part of the project that you'll see, there's a buoy that we installed there to do constant water quality monitoring, plus we go out once a week to get samples. And all the measurements we make are relative to what we call both state and federal water quality standards. And I don't know what's happening there, so maybe I'll just keep going in the interest of time.
Pulled up on this.
it's over here. You're good.
It is?
Yeah, we got you.
Charles, can you pull
Anyway,
up
I can see it there. That would be
Can you
good.
pull
Or I
up
could move.
Dr. Gobler's presentation on both screens, maybe, Charles?
You can't have it all.
only get what I got.
I mean, if you want to sit here and face that way, maybe that would
Yeah.
work.
Might be easiest, although then I wouldn't be.
Why don't you sit at the desk, because there's a
There's a
microphone.
Yeah, if you
microphone
sit
here.
here, and the microphone will pick you up, and then you can just point.
Okay.
and
Well,
we'll-
there's a microphone in the other desk.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's up to
James's
you,
desk?
It's up to you, it's up to you. You can sit there.
You want
James's
to
desk.
you want to be
You can sit where
Bill?
you are.
Sit where you are, Doctor. Sit right there.
Okay.
You're good.
Should
Sit
I
right
get?
there.
Should I get a mic? Maybe.
I think he's
No,
got
no,
you. As long
no,
as
there's
he's-
mics on the table here.
You'll
Chris,
pick me up.
if
You want
Okay.
to sit over here?
He's
You
got
can be
you.
Bill Parrish.
As long as Charles says,
I'll be myself.
as long as Charles says he's got you, he's got you. Right,
Okay.
Charles?
Thanks, Charles.
Okay, so next slide, Charles. Okay, so this is the overall, you can see the program goals and objectives, like I mentioned, water quality, looking at what sources of water quality, nitrogen sources, and then bivalves. Next slide. And any chance to go to full screen mode, hey, Charles?
Hey, we're getting there.
Getting there. It's fine. Anyway, you've got one thing layered over there. We built a buoy that gives continuous monitoring data that anyone, including you all, could monitor through the summer any given year to see what conditions are like. So if we go to the next slide, just look at some data, what it looked like last year as an example. And we've got every year, I think, going back to, I don't know what year, 2019 or so, 18.
Yeah.
So just as an example here, you can see that this is salinity. So the salinity, prior to opening the cut, you can see is around 5, and then suddenly the cut opened in August. That salinity shoots right up. But the cut only staying open for a week. I think that's kind of standard, actually. And then slowly that salinity starts creeping down to where it had been, or getting towards that. Although you can see, here we are 2 months in, and it still hasn't gotten back to where it was. Next slide, Charles. So just to show some general water quality things, and there's been some shifts, so not all the slides are as clean as I'd like, but these are levels of dissolved oxygen. And so what you can see, actually surprisingly, and this is out towards the mouth, the buoy is located at the southern extent of the pond. Firstly, the data, you may look at the data and be like, wow, that's a mess. But that's actually what real oxygen data looks like in an ecosystem setting. You get a peak every single day due to photosynthesis by day. You get a trough every single night due to what we call respiration. Firstly, so you can see, it goes up and down every single day. You get low oxygen events happening, as you can see here, for most of August into September. Not uncommon. You're going to see that general pattern in any ecosystem, although the levels here are lower than we'd certainly like. And then one really big surprise, we've seen this in Georgia Pond also, when you open the cut, for reasons I've yet to understand, right after it opens, the oxygen levels that night go to 0. I don't know why. It's a little tricky. I think it might have to do with the idea of, my best hypothesis, groundwater that's sort of stagnant and not flowing out because the pond is so full, having the oxygen pulled out of it, and then suddenly all the water's let out, and then that low oxygen groundwater goes out, but that's just a hypothesis. You can see while the cut was open, the oxygen levels, if you can see it, that second arrow there, it says ocean cut closed, 17th, everything's offset a little, but you can see the oxygen actually did pop up appreciably while the cut was open, and then came back down again. All right, next slide. And I'll just go through these quickly, but this is blue-green algae, certainly a concern, a human health concern. It's been historically, these blue-green algae, also known as cyanobacteria, have been present in Sag Pond, so it's something we've kept a careful eye on. Next slide, because it does have human health implications. Next slide. Implications for pets. Dog died in Georgia Pond, for example, from these blue-green algae in 2012. Next slide. And they do make toxins, in some cases so powerful, actually powerful enough to kill off elephants. So something to be concerned about. Next slide. So interestingly, when the cut was closed, we did see the levels of blue-green algae drop off. And when it was open, I'm sorry, but when it closed, the levels went back up. Next slide. So these are not measurements from the buoy, but are actual handheld measurements we make every single week. And so in this case, we have an instrument that calibrated with New York State. So if we make a measurement, it's an official measurement. We can compare against the state standards. And so what you can see is that it's actually not only the levels are high, but they're higher than the New York State standard for keeping the water body open for recreation. The levels drop dramatically. You can see when the cut's open, but then they come back up thereafter. Next slide. And then just for reference, the levels of total algae in Sac Pond are pretty high. So EPA would tell you you don't really want levels above, and the measurement here is chlorophyll, above 8 micrograms per liter. And again, all these slides shifted a little bit as I went from computer to computer, but we're well above that the entire year. Again, a drop when the cut's open, but still above that. Okay, next slide. Just on the blue-green algae, this is over many, many years. Many types are present in the water. We do see the toxin known as microcystin. That's a gastrointestinal toxin. It's above the level for drinking water, but below the recreational standard, which is about 8 milligrams per liter. We're also, again, looking at relative importance of nitrogen and phosphorus in promoting these blooms. Next slide, Charles. So these are experimentally derived outcomes. Next slide. And so when we do this, what we find is that enriching that water with nitrogen with or without phosphorus leads to higher levels of algae in the pond. So nitrogen is clearly a driver to the system. So from there, the question is, where's the nitrogen coming from? And so we've looked at all these potential sources in the pond. What's different than what people have done before, for example, like Suffolk County, is we're also looking at the sediment, which in freshwater bodies and brackish water bodies can be a very strong source of sediment. Next slide. So this shows some of the sediment data. This is specifically looking at how deep the mud is in Sag Pond. And the pattern here is totally intuitive. The southern end of the pond that exchanges well with the ocean has no mud. It's mainly sands, actually. And the neck instead has a very thick layer of mud, about 1 meter deep. Next slide. And along with that, the organic matter content of the sediments matches that as well. The organic matter accumulates up in the neck, and you've got mainly clean sands in the southern extent. Next slide. When we did all the math and figured out where the nitrogen is coming from, we see that agriculture is actually the biggest source of nitrogen for this watershed, but that cesspools and septic tanks are the second biggest source. And we've looked at groundwater throughout the system, and we can see that the hot spot for groundwater is just northwest of the pond. And the two holes in here are actually areas, this Paxabog pond, the other two holes are actually areas of public water wells. And so because of that, they're not contributing groundwater to Sagaponic Pond. But the areas around there, you can see particularly just northwest of the pond, have very high levels of nitrate in the groundwater. Next slide. Suffolk County's looked at this water body as well. If you look at the lower left, they suggest there should be a 63% reduction in the nitrogen loading to the system, and they've made it the highest priority for addressing nitrogen. Next slide. So on the nitrogen front, I mentioned septic tanks and cesspools that are a very strong source of nitrogen. Next slide. Suffolk County does have a program for addressing that. Next slide, which somehow got very, very small, but I also direct the Center for Clean Water Technology at the university, where we're harnessing science to engineer clean water for the protection of public health and the environment in New York and beyond. And we've developed these nitrogen removing biofilters, which are based on, next slide, Charles, just based on layer of sand with a layer of wood chips. Next slide. And this really got concocted here, this particular slide, but that's okay. If you could see the x-axis here, what you see in the red are the systems the center has developed, and this is the amount of nitrogen that comes out of each different system. The green system, wow, and it looks even worse if you can see what it looks like down there. So these all change, but what you're looking at is the amount of nitrogen coming out of different septic systems that have been used in Suffolk County. The reason there's a red bar all the way on the left is that the system that we developed at the university is the best performing system in Suffolk County. It's called a lined nitrogen removing biofilter. The actual standard, that dotted line that's been changed, should be at 19. And we've got a few other systems in the pipe as well. But our line system is the best performing. Next slide. And in happy news, these are the 3 different systems we have. That best performing one is about to be approved by Suffolk County this month for general installation, which is an exciting outcome. And title of this slide got lost, but that's fine. We've hired a new person at the center. His name is Tom Varley. What you can't see here, what was in the title, is that his title is Watershed Manager. So he works for the Center for Clean Water Technology. He has been hired as the Watershed Manager for Sagaponack Pond. This is a position that he's working for the Center for Clean Water Technology. The position's funded by the Peconic Land Trust. And the whole idea is Tom's got a 40-year background in wastewater and in groundwater. He's working with homeowners in the watershed to expedite the installation of these systems. But most importantly, he's got no skin in the game, nor do we, to make any money. We're not a commercial venture.
How far
Right.
is the watershed?
How big is the watershed?
Yeah, where it leaks into the side.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at probably over 1,000 homes. So it's pretty big.
It's mostly to the west?
To the north and northwest, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But the whole idea is that these, installations to date I'll just be honest, these are businesses, people looking to install the systems, and it's however many you can get installed is how much money you will make as a business, and that's what's, it's a profit-driven approach. So whereas Tom's approach is looking at each individual home and figuring out what's the most environmentally protective system that can be installed in this. And then further helping the homeowners go through the entire process, following up with them to make sure they go through the entire process. And then further at the center we've developed what's known as a nitrogen sensor. This can be installed in any septic system and make real-time measurements, just like the buoy gives me real-time data. This nitrogen sensor gives real-time performance data on each system. Because what we're finding is, many of these systems work great, but sometimes they don't. And to find out it's not working, sometimes you'll find out a year later. We've installed this thing, and we've already done this before. We install it, and all of a sudden we instantly say, this isn't working right. And every system has an operation and maintenance contract. So that you can instantly get a call. We had a system, for example, in Hampton Bays was installed. We put the sensor in there, and instantly we said, this isn't working. And then we thought it was our sensor, so we brought it back, recalibrated the same data, and we had a service call done, the blower was off. Right? And so as soon as the blower went back on, system came right back into line.
You find a common denominator in issues that you see?
Not necessarily, but actually that's the good thing about the nitrogen sensor. It measures two types of nitrogen, so it can tell you there's two parts in removing nitrogen. It's called nitrification and denitrification. So the sensor can identify where the holdup might be.
Gotcha.
And Tom is making sure that those are going to be installed on all the systems. So this is a new initiative, and we're doing this for Sagaponack Pond and Georgia Pond. And if it goes well, we want to do it in more places. Okay, next slide. So again, two things on top of each other here, but you heard me talk about oysters. Next slide. We know why they're important, and that is, they're filter feeders, and in an ideal situation, they keep the water clean and can have other ecosystem-wide effects. So next slide, Charles. We deployed oysters on 2 consecutive years within Sag Pond. Next slide. We did that both in the north end of the pond and the south end of the pond. Next slide. And we've put out multiple cohorts of oysters, 0 year, 1 year, and spat on shell, 0 year. So next slide. This is our first year of deployment, and in this particular year, very low survival for the first year individuals, or the young of the year, so to speak, whereas the 1-year-olds, a little bit better survival, but still not great compared to some other locations. So for example, just 2 months, only about 10% survival of the small individuals as young of the year, and about 20% for the year, the second year class. Next slide. And then here, comparing spat on shell to individuals deployed, we see better survival for the spat on shell, so that might be a hopeful sign. But in general, before this is the last I'm going to show on the oysters, just say, I think we actually need to improve water quality before we think about oysters in there. You saw how low the oxygen gets every single day. And so between that and the blue-green algae, I think we might want to this is a water body where I think we might want to focus on getting the water quality better first, and then going after the oysters. There's more that will and could be done there, but that's my preliminary assessment on the oyster front. So next slide. And this is the next steps. And so I think, we've got 5 years of really good data now for Sag Pond. So I feel like we're in a position to put together a data-driven, science-based management plan that could be drafted and implemented for the pond. This would include both what I would call watershed solutions and in-the-water solutions for improving water quality. And with a plan like this done, I feel like Sag Pond would be in pole position for getting CPF funds, because this is all the data we've collected is the preliminary data that you'd need to justify a solid CPF project. And when I say CPF project, I don't mean like more monitoring, but I mean like, addressing septics, addressing wastewater, addressing fertilizer, because now we have the data. Before this study, we would have been shooting in the dark. Where's the nitrogen coming from? And if we would have guessed here, we would have guessed wrong, right? We would have said, septics are number one. False, right? It's not. It's actually agricultural fertilizer. Septics are still important, second most important, and they're not too different from each other, but it just proves the importance of the study.
Is the farm fertilizer, is it old fertilizer or new fertilizer?
So when we
It
did,
can sit in the ground for a while.
yeah. So when we
Years
did
ago.
the nitrogen budget, the nitrogen loading model, we used the most up-to-date data possible. And so we looked at all the farm fields and based it on the current status. But you're right, there is going to be some legacy nitrogen even beyond that.
Yeah.
But that would be accounted for by the groundwater that's nitrogen levels, and so we know where those hot spots are as well.
Okay.
And I can say that also that I do work closely with some people at Cornell who do groundwater work, and they're doing some follow-up studies that could also be part of a management plan.
Because I don't want the farmers
well.
to get a bad rap.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, we were very diligent about, for each farm, saying, okay, this looks like it's a farm, is it active? And if it's, and I'll also say for the nitrogen loading budget, we have to have an assessment of what's being grown in a given farm before we ascribe a nitrogen loading value there, because the use of fertilizer differs depending on how crops are being used. And thank goodness, actually, farmers, you're on the right track. Farmers today are a lot more sophisticated than probably they're given credit for, but certainly more sophisticated than they've had been in the
Than
past.
homeowners.
They don't want to spend, and they don't want to spend all the extra money on fertilizer if they don't need to. So, and that's why when we run our model, we understand not only is it an active farm, but what are they farming, because then that allows us to ascribe the proper nitrogen fertilization rate.
Because you really only have the farm in the northeast corner farming.
Correct. That's right.
That small
Yeah.
piece, because the other piece was bought.
Yeah.
It's not farmed
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. But there are. I mean, it's a big watershed. So there are farms north of there. Okay, and I think this wraps it up then. So the next slide is just simply conclusions. There's all sorts of water quality impairments, but the bottom line is I think we're ready to put together a management plan that would consider solutions, like I said, both for the watershed and for the water. And it's a group effort. It's really the students in the lab who are getting all the work done. And once in a while, my son Dave, helps out.
Is that
also.
fishing?
Yeah.
Can you just let the people know at home who funds you on this project?
Yeah, so this was, mainly through a joint grant with the trustees, so that was part of it. But then also, in addition to that, private funding from Peconic Land Trust, and with that, it's actually homeowners in the watershed who supported that, so, yeah.
Appreciate you coming in.
And all part is with the CPS fund?
Correct,
Okay.
that's right.
Does
Thank you.
anyone
Thank you.
have any questions?
I don't, always great to see you.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you
Presentation.
for being quick.
All right.
Thank you for the information.
Thank you for spelling
Always-
it out, and thank you for giving next steps.
Yeah,
as well.
my
Really
pleasure.
appreciate
So
that.
happy to continue that conversation
Yes.
as
Be very
appropriate.
forward to look for the next steps.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, excellent, as always. You have another discussion on with Cornell Cooperative Extension-Based Scallop Restoration Program, PowerPoint. Harrison? Come on up, Harrison. Well, yeah, you could go to the podium because you're in a different scenario than,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you.
So whenever you guys are ready, I can
Go for it.
get going. All right. Well, thank you all for having me today. I really appreciate this opportunity. This has been a couple years of work, and this is our first time really reporting on it in public, so this is great. I really appreciate it. My name is Harrison Toby. Been with Cornell for about 2 years now. I'm one of their lead researchers on their Bay Scallop Restoration Project, and today I'm going to be talking about our Southampton Town Bay Scallop Restoration Project that's funded by the CPF. Real quick, just a quick background on Long Island Bay Scallops. Historically, very profitable fishery, but then from the mid-1980s to mid-1990s, we had a series of brown tide blooms. It drove our populations to near local extinction, and then no local recovery for over 12 years. Local recovery coincided, at least in the Peconics, with the initiation of our Bay Scallop Restoration Program, which was led by Smith and Dr. Tettelbach. That got initiated in 2005. And here's a graph showing the good and then the bad. So you can see that after the CCE started its restoration program, the pounds of meat landed by Bayman in the Peconics went up. There is some fluctuation, but you can see, for example, in 2017 and 2018, very productive years. And then 2019 came around. And in 2019 and through now, we've been seeing massive reductions in adult scallops in that second year, coinciding with multiple factors, all happening around when they spawn in that second year of their lifespan. And this is, you know, these mass die-offs are leading to drastic reductions in commercial catches by Bayman. And I'll talk more about our next steps in light of these mass die-offs, what we think or now understand that's causing them. But just kind of give you a background on what we do, how we go out and actually sample in the field to assess restoration success. We do population monitoring. This primarily happens in the spring and in the fall. We also do recruitment evaluation, so this can be done through SPAC collection using SPAC collectors. We can also use the density of juvenile scallops we see in our fall surveys as well, because if there is recruitment, we would expect to see juveniles, and juveniles let us know that recruitment is happening. We also monitor growth, reproduction, and survival. This occurs primarily in scallops we have held in aquaculture gear. Out in Orient Harbor, we have a really large, we call it our spawner sanctuary, but it also has juveniles. The scallops are contained, so we can go out and sample bi-weekly. Which is very convenient. We also have multiple studies that are in the field that we sample as well. How do we do our population monitoring? This is all done via scuba. We dive down, we make assessments on scallop population densities, we record juveniles and adults, we also measure their shell heights. We also document the bottom type and any changes we see over time, bottom characteristics, as well as predator type and then the prevalence of each predator. So now this brings us to planting and monitoring in Southampton. This occurred in 2021 and 2022. They were planted in November of each of these years. 2 to 3 pre-selected locations. First year we had 2. This past year, Greg Rivara talked to a couple of you and got some more recommendations, so we expanded our planting locations in 2022. And then again, we did population surveys at all 3 of these sites. So the 2 locations we selected in 2021 for our fall plantings, right off the Tiana Coast Guard Station, we planted 100,000 juvenile scallops there, and then a location just east of Cornell's Tiana Bayside facility. So 200,000 scallops total, split between 2 sites. We then went back in June of 2022 to do a population survey at these sites to assess overwintering survival and kind of get an idea of what we're looking at this time of year for environment and predators. The Coast Guard Station just off of there was selected because it has dense eelgrass. So no surprise, very dense eelgrass beds there. We did see a really high predator prevalence. So eelgrass, refuge for bay scallops, but it also is good habitat for apparently the predators too. Who would have thought? So we saw a lot of spider crabs, whelk, fluke, flounder, Greg actually saw one skate, so there's definitely a lot of activity, a lot of biodiversity there. However, we saw a really low scallop density. So this is where we planted in the fall. So we expected to see a lot of scallops there. One thing to account for, though, is that this is a pretty high flow area when the tides are shifting. Scallops don't move that far, but they can move. So there is a possibility, the current and their little bit of movement that they can do, move them outside of our site. We did swim around a bit more, but we didn't include those scallops in our density assessments. We just wanted to see what was out there, but still pretty low density overall in that area. But it could have also been due to predation. And then our east of Tiana Bayside facility location, which was our second planting location in November 2021. A little bit better results here, at least for overwintering. The site, very different from the Coast Guard Station site. It was just muddy sand, no vegetation, like some alva here and there, but nothing significant. And then no predators. But we did see scallops there that we had planted in the previous year. About 1 per square meter, so when you dive down and you look around, you can see scallops in every direction. They're not like on top of each other, but they were there. So we actually did this dive after the Coast Guard station, so we had a little bit more, we were thinking about going outside of where we planted. Let's go see what's out there. And they had obviously spread out. We were swimming around, just finding scallops here, there, outside of the area that we planted in November. So there was some movement. Another thing to consider is that we planted these scallops in November. We planted them 2 weeks after the opening of the season in order to avoid baymen catching them, or at least reduce stress on these juveniles. But when we were out there this past fall, in November, people were actively dredging while we were dumping. So it's not out of the question that some of these scallops were actually relocated by baymen, a few hundred feet from where we planted, because obviously they can't keep the juveniles, so they're going to toss them back, but they're not going to try to toss them back right on, they're not going to do a scientific approach like we did and be like, all right, they need to be within this quadrant. So it could have also been movement of scallops by baymen as well. In these June surveys, we also collected subsamples of adult scallops of the ones we planted from each location. We wanted to get an idea of how reproductively active and healthy these scallops were at this time. So we collected from both sites, took gonadal indices. Gonadal indices are just a metric comparing gonad weight to overall weight. And again, these give us primarily the reproductive status. But the reproductive status also gives us insight on the health of the scallop, fecundity, and then their recruitment potential for the future. So this graph, the writing's pretty small, but the blue line represents scallops from our long lines in Orient Harbor. We monitor them every 2 weeks to track their reproductive cycles. So that's the highest GI we recorded on those longline scallops before it went back down again. So we make the inference that that GI in blue represented the maximum GI in those scallops right before spawning. The water temperature was 18.6 at all of these samplings. When we went and sampled in Tiana, also 18.6, and in orange and gray are our sub-samples from the 2 Tiana sites. And as you can see, equivalent and even a little bit higher gonadal indices of the scallops in Southampton. So high reproductive potential, they're healthy, so there could be, these scallops could contribute to recruitment, like wild recruitment in that area. So we then, per Greg Rivara's investigations, he found a third site. So in October 2022, we went and did fall surveys prior to planting at these 3 locations. Real quick, we actually saw an increase in scallop density at the Tiana Coast Guard Station. And mind you, these are just adult scallops. I'm not accounting for the juveniles, which we only saw a couple. But we saw an increase in the adult scallop densities there. Again, dense eelgrass vegetation, so there was patchiness, so the scallops are obviously a little bit easier to see when they're on the sand, but I think they spread out. So we did see this increase, but I don't think there were a ton of scallops moving back in. I think it's just the nature of the organism. Little bit different at our east and west sites. So just to reiterate, we planted at the east site in 2021. The western site was a new site. So we didn't expect to see scallops at the western site. However, when we went back to the eastern site where we did see scallops in the spring, we saw nothing. No scallops, no predators, and no shells. So it was kind of weird. Could it have been predation? Maybe. What I think is that we're seeing something similar to what we're seeing in the Peconics right now in shallow sites. So this site was about 4 feet mid, like at mid tide. So it's pretty shallow. And I'll get a little bit more into the causes of these mortalities in just a minute, but I'll give you a hint: increased summer water temperatures, low DO, parasites. So we planted at these 3 locations, again, 200,000 scallops, split between 3 sites this time. We planted 80,000 at the Coast Guard station, and then 60 and 60 at the 2 eastern and western sites. Real quick, planting and survey conclusion: Coast Guard station, potentially high predation there, but dense eelgrass, so definitely a healthy site, which is good. East of Tiana Bayside facility, shallow, potential causes for mortality and disappearance. So Gobler in his lab just released that paper looking at elevated summer water temperatures and their impacts on survival of juvenile and adult scallops. So I think we all have a pretty good grasp now as to what's behind these mass die-offs. So elevated water temperature and low DO, typically coupled together, and then exposure to this new parasite that Dr. Alam at Stony Brook main campus found. The first recording of the parasite was that fall of 2019, right when the mass die-off started happening. So is it coincidence? Potentially, but it's a complicated system, and I think there's a lot of stuff at play, but I think we're getting a good idea of what's causing it. Now it's time to move forward, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end of the presentation, or it is the end of the presentation, talking about that. And again, I think that these are similar trends to what we're seeing in the Peconics. We have multiple field sites that we've been monitoring for years there, tracking dissolved oxygen, tracking water temperature, and then tracking this parasite. So, in addition to the surveys and plantings, we also grew scallops right outside of our Tiana Bayside facility. I'm just going to talk about the experiment that I conducted June 2022 through September, actually October. So my background prior to coming to Cornell was bay scallop aquaculture research on Cape Cod, and then I managed a large-scale oyster farm on Cape Cod. So aquaculture is something that I have a little bit of background in, so I really wanted to play around with this. So we did 3 different gear types. We used your standard lantern net, which would float at the surface. But then I designed a 3-tier tray that could either be attached to the bottom or float pelagically. So what we wanted to investigate was surface gear, pelagic gear, bottom gear, and that's what we did. To do this, we would go and we'd take all the scallops out of the gear every 2 weeks. We would do survival. We'd look at growth rates and shell height, and then if you're taking the gear out, clean it. So every 2 weeks we would clean the gear. This is imperative. It increases flow, which increases food availability, as well as dissolved oxygen. So clean the gear, more water comes through, it's better for everyone. We would also reduce the stocking densities every 2 weeks. This is also important because as the scallops grow, they need more space. The scallops like to kind of knife at each other. So you got to be careful at how high of a density you stock them at. So here's a graph just showing the shell height measurements for each gear type, or scallops held in each gear type, excuse me. And the dates are a little bit off, it looks like. Nope, those are right. So what we were tracking, again, just shell heights, but at the end of the experiment, as you can see, all scallops held in all 3 gear types had very similar final shell heights. So for growth, these 3 gear types worked very well. And even better for survival. So we had thousands of scallops, tens of thousands of scallops there, and you might see 1 or 2 shells coming out of these bags of gear. So really high survival in just off of the Tiana station as well, which is great. So we have high survival, great growth rates, and all 3 of these gears, given these results, could be potential for future use there. However, we have that whole SPAT program down at the Bayside facility, and they were kind of laughing at me, being like, "Man, you got really, really lucky this summer, because when there's waves and wind, surface gear gets ripped apart." And I've seen it. We tried a lot of different surface gear types on Cape Cod, lantern nets with surface buoys, and we lost a lot of gear. So that's why I wanted to look at the pelagic gear, because it keeps stuff off the bottom, away from low DO at night. So I think moving forward, if we were to do this again, try to avoid surface gear, because I kind of think I did get lucky, and obviously it would be good to continue that investigation, but we saw good survival and growth in all 3 gear types, so I think we should go with the safe bet and not try to test our luck. Again, just kind of a conclusion on the aquaculture portion. High potential for future culturing efforts at this site. Intermediate year 1 culturing of juveniles. Intermediate, it's that first year of culturing prior to the first overwintering period. But what I would also like to try is setting up something similar to what we have in Orient Harbor, which is a spawner sanctuary with adults that are protected from predators, are in close proximity to each other, which helps enhance fertilization. So you've got protection and better fertilization. It's a good way of kind of not ensuring that recruitment happens, but promoting it. And again, just environmental considerations, waves and wind. So that might dictate our gear type choice. Future steps, same thing I basically just said. Increase the number of scallops we deploy there by increasing the amount of gear we deploy. Majority would be juveniles. I'd like to try to get some adult spawner scallops as well. And then if we did put out adult spawner scallops, I would like to try to track them similarly to what we do in Orient Harbor, so we can look at reproductive cycles there. I'd also like to, if we did put out the spawner scallops, put out SPAC collectors as well. So we can, we could all day be like, yeah, these scallops, they're really healthy, they have healthy gonads, but we also need to show that there's spawning happening, and the SPAT larval collection process shows us if there is indeed fertilization, good larval recruitment. So I think there's a lot of steps forward that could give us better insight on what's going on. And real quick, so we talked about the mass die-offs, elevated water temperature, low DO, parasites, and I think we're getting a good understanding of what's causing these. One thing that, like, when people talk to me, they're like, oh, well, you know what's causing it. You can't really stop climate change, really. And it's like, well, all right, so that's a macro scale. Let's start getting a little bit smaller and trying to look at other alternatives. So one of these projects that we're doing, we actually just started this past fall. It will really small project, but it'll be going through next summer, is our fall spawn versus summer spawn scallops. Typically, bay scallops spawn in the late spring, early summer of their 2nd year. They can also have a fall spawn as well. Dr. Tettelbach presented in December at the PEP meeting and actually showed 2017 and 2018 when he went out and did his fall surveys, fall spawned scallops represented the majority of the adult scallops he sampled. So, but that's not consistent every year. But obviously, these fall spawn scallops have a role within the overall population dynamics. But if the adult scallops are dying in July and August, and the spawn happens in September and October, there's not a lot of adult scallops that can contribute to this. And then on top of that, this parasite that's infecting the scallops is most prevalent in the water and in the sediment from June through about mid-September. So the juveniles that are produced in this traditional spring or summer spawn have about 4 months of exposure, 3 to 4 months of exposure. A scallop born in October might not have any exposure, or at least very limited. Come around into that summer of the 2nd year, you've got a lower parasite intensity in the fall spawn compared to the summer spawn, and there's a potential there for the fall spawn scallops to survive the summer better because they'll have lower parasite intensity. Thus, they'll be able to contribute to future fall spawns. And then the real ultimate goal is we'll have scallops for Bayman. At the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. Obviously, we'd like to protect the species, but we also, this is a really important, iconic species for Long Island. So there's many things here. So we'll track the differences in parasites and in survival between those two groups. And I've been talking a lot longer than you probably want me to, so real quick, restorative breeding. This has been going on for about 1.5 years now. Multiple projects under the banner of this, but long story short, we are collecting scallops from the field, we're doing genomics, we're doing parasitology, and we're spawning different strains until we get the genomics. We don't actually know if they're genetically unique, but right now we're assuming they are. And we're hoping that these scallops that survive the mass die-offs possess genetics that allowed them to survive. We hope, and that it's not just chance. I'm sure some of it is chance, but we're hoping that there are genetics there. And we want to take scallops with these different genetics and see if there are differences in survival and parasite prevalence. And if there are, and some have better survival and more parasite resistance, we will start using those as our brood stock for our management of the Peconics, and if we kept doing it in Southampton as well, any results from this stuff, we would obviously transpose to our practices there as well. And again, thank you guys for having me today. Thank you for funding this project. It was really fun, and obviously, I would like to continue doing it, but it ends in June, so we'll have to see. But thank you again, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you for a super comprehensive look at this. It is such an important thing to be continuing to carry on. It's such an important industry for us.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You do realize that there was a fairly decent harvest of scallops in western Moriches Bay and Brookhaven Town this year?
Yep.
And we did put some of Cornell's scallops, not the CPF money ones, but ones that we get every year annually,
rag.
in Moriches Bay.
Yep.
And where we placed them in and talking to the bayman, there was another whole set of scallops evidently on the Southampton side also. So you might want to look into getting those scallops to use, because from what I understand from some of the baymen, it was a pretty good harvest. And there was very, very few dead scallops up there, where if you went in Peconic, you throw a dredge over and you pick 50 scallops up, 50 of them would be dead.
Yep.
So, and I understand it's a shallow water, the water was warm up there, but something's happening in the South Shore bays. And that's why I really harped with Greg pushing our scallops further west in western Shinnecock Bay, where historically scallops would set in the 40s, 50s, 60s when they used to set up there all the time. I'm just very curious to see how the survival rate over the winter and also the survival rate during the summer season after they spawn happens there.
Yes. Well, so I've only been with Cornell for 2 years, but Chris Smith kind of gave me last summer, was like, do you want to take some lead on this? And this was like my first big project with Cornell, and it was so much fun. But the thing is that it raised more questions than it answered.
Well, it's a good project.
And that's like, we got all this cool stuff about aquaculture gear and growing them, and that's great. But again, reproductive cycles, tracking survival, bi-weekly of adults. Like, we have super high survival of juveniles at Orion Harbor. We actually have pretty high survival of adults in our aquaculture gear as well. But I'd really, again, it's all Long Island, but these are two really, in my opinion, very different systems. And I think we're dealing with potentially two different, genetically different populations too, at least the wild ones. Obviously, the ones we planted are probably going to have similar genetics to the ones we planted in Peconic. But I think that there are some genetic differences and environmental differences. We actually went and dove, Tettleback and I spent probably 4 hours each swimming off. If you're looking at the Coast Guard station and you head east, we spent 5 hours underwater each. And we found about 20 adult scallops, but we sent those to Balsam Alam, and he is sending those out to have genomics works done. I guess he sent out like over 100 samples. He actually went to the Natural History Museum and got scallops from 1903 that he has sent out for genomics as well. So I think the restorative breeding moving forward, once we get this genomics information, like it's out of my comprehension. I was horrible at genetics in college. But once we get more of this information, I think it's going to be really exciting.
Well,
And I think,
just to let you know that you did have some success from last year's scallops, because everywhere in Shinnecock Bay where I've been clamming, which is literally the whole entire bay, you can catch 1 or 2 or 3 scallops. So they're not by the Coast Guard station. It's to the reservation and points west and east. It's pretty impressive. They're not thick where you can harvest a lot of them,
yeah.
but there's a population that's spread out through the whole ecosystem there.
Well, what would be really good is just to make sure that there's a high enough density so they can, I know it sounds ridiculous, but so that they can find each other at spawning and at least have some chance of natural recruitment there. So the fact that they're at least surviving, that's great. Greg said that you told him, Ed, that 2 or 4 fishermen caught like over 100 pounds in Shinnecock in about 2 days. Is that?
No, yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's awesome.
Yeah, there was a harvest there, and it was actually not where we put the scallops last year, because
Yeah.
I went with them when they put them. It was south further, right off the Coast Guard station, and there was 3 guys that worked there for the better part of a week. So there
Well,
was a
I
harvest.
think that kind of goes back to like why we saw like a reduction in the density over the winter. They don't move a lot, but they can move. But it can rip, like the tide can rip in there. So like they swim off about a foot, and let's keep doing that. And then again, I do think the baymen, they bring them up. They can't keep them. They've gone 500,000 feet from that site, and then they dump the juveniles back over. So there's definitely a lot of unanswered questions that could be answered, but we'll have to wait and see.
All right,
Gentlemen,
thank you for your presentation.
thank you very much for your presentation.
Good.
Thank you.
Just like the Board of Trustees, whose official seal is the scallop, we are surviving, just like the scallops.
Yep.
But thank you very much for a very informative presentation. Fabulous collaborating with you.
Fish stocking.
Well, no, we have some public hearings to go, and then I think
Right.
we'll head into public
These
portion.
Okay.
guys talk really quick.
These guys?
Yeah.
You want to do them before public portion? Or do you wanna do-
Yes.
Let's
wanna
do
let
them.
these guys?
Let's,
All right, so what do we have? This was from this morning, right?
Morning's
This is
Supposed to
agenda.
have,
fish stocking.
Kevin and
right, so
can't
so
talk
let's
about-
do this. We're gonna, because there was a little confusion, we had a discussion on our meeting about fish stocking, right? So we've
Come
got
on
Kenny
up.
Morse and Kevin Deller, so why don't you come up, we'll have this
Come right up
discussion
here.
now.
yeah, why
You
not?
can both come up, you come here, you can bring that over here, and you can sit over here.
Today is
Bring
You
up-
could like,
bring
Kevin,
the
bring the
list with you.
sign-in sheet.
Sorry?
You bring the
Is
sign
the
in.
sign-in sheet on the podium there?
Yeah.
This way you can state your names for the record and sign in,
Sure.
this way we'll know where to find you if there's some issue.
Like sit in our living room here.
Let's do it now or afterwards?
No, you can do it now. So we were gonna have this discussion, well, it was on the agenda for this morning, but I guess we had some confusion, but we'll address it now.
We're happy you're here.
Yeah,
Yes.
Thank you, both of you.
good to see you.
Because fish stocking's really important.
Especially when you got 2 fishermen talking about fish stocking.
Yeah, actually, all this is tying in, which is, I think, all great. All good. We don't have a slide presentation like that, though, I can tell you
It's
that.
okay, it's okay.
We'll have a slide.
It's all good.
No, that's
You're
very
good.
impressive. May I start speaking, or?
Sure.
Well, again, thank you for everything. and
Just
listening.
introduce yourself.
Yeah.
and,
Absolutely. My name is Kevin Daler. I live in Sag Harbor. Avid outdoorsman, fisherman. 2 sons, 11 and 13, very active in the community and Little League and basketball and flag football and fishing. And actually was here just a few days ago speaking about the school in Sag Harbor buying more land. And I made a point about things that we're battling as parents now that none of us had to battle or parents had to deal with, was getting our kids off of devices, getting them sweaty, salty, sandy, dirty, as I like to call them, get them outside. And it kind of ties into what we started thinking about this and battling that and getting more activities for kids and selfishly for big kids. You know, I had a number of questions, just started thinking about trout stockings. I spoke to Cold Spring Harbor a little bit, and every spring we see everything about the DEC and what they're doing island-wide. And I just had some thoughts and questions about the trustees' role in stocking, you know, what bodies of water in Southampton, you know, what is is there a formula of the amount of fish per acre? You know, what sizes of fish are stocked, the timing of the stockings, which I learned a lot by speaking to some of these people in the hatcheries, about predation, about if they go in too late, about stocking sizes in the fall, if we want to have them to be bigger fish in the spring, when we are, you know, selfishly focused more on freshwater fishing out of the gate, since we don't have flounder anymore, but hopefully we can fix that too. Get the winter flounder back. But, you know, traditionally, trout season opens April 1, and, you know, it would be impactful to have.
We have a very small budget for fish stocking.
That was one of my questions on the
Well,
budget.
yeah, I mean, that's, you know, shellfish and products of the bottom is generally, you know, something that obviously the trustees, you know, substantially, you know, focus on. But in the interest of, you know, everything that you just mentioned, we do try and engage in fish stocking. We have permits for certain areas, and
We
we get
have permits for the whole
the
town.
whole town, and we concentrate on certain types of fish, and we have a very small budget.
Yeah, last year, I believe, spent $3,500,
Yeah, $3,000.
which we, you know, when Fred Habermeyer was here, that was his favorite thing to do. After, when he left and wasn't reelected, I took it over, and basically, we were working with Norman Sewell, and then we subsequently are working with Cold Springs. The hatchery up there, very happy with their product. The fish are very good. We usually try to get the smaller fish so we can get more fish. Usually we put about 10 or 11 ponds, lakes and ponds that we have. It used to be 5 or 6, so I basically have doubled it, but the amount of fish that go in, you know, is lower. We try to get the smaller, like I said, the smaller fish so we can get more bodies in there, and then we usually put them in usually May-ish or somewheres around there, depending when they get availability and time frame that they could come out here. And we put them in, we usually let them stay in there a week or so to disperse. Because what I understood and what I've seen with Norman, you take the fish, you take them out of the truck, you dump them in the pond, and they stay there. It takes about 4 or 5 days for them to disperse and to go. I mean, we may only put 100 or 75 or whatever amount of fish in each pond. We don't have a large budget to do it. I mean, if we get some more funding and, you know, we could do a little bit more. But, you know, between the shellfish and all the other stuff we do, we have to, you know, divide it up as, you know, fairly as we can.
Right.
Completely understanding how they ball up, you know, even like in Trout Pond, they're all just right by the dock when
Right.
you drop them in. So I have 2 thoughts on that. Would you consider putting them in March when the DEC is doing a lot of their stockings, if they were available, before anyone is allowed to keep them, and so they would be able to have some time to disperse. So by the time trout season opened up, hopefully those fish would be more spread out amongst the body of water, or perhaps stocking in the fall. So those fish are bigger come opening day in the following April, and it would be dispersed as well. And perhaps Kenny can speak to this a little better, but as far as predation of putting them in May or June when the largemouth bass are on the feed, you're just giving them like a free Snickers bar.
I mean, March is a tough month because the ponds can still be frozen, and handling them when it's really cold is problematic. And the availability of when the hatcheries have them available to put in, that's another question. I've never thought about putting them in the fall, I don't know how long, do they winter over well, you know, there's a lot of questions that would have to be answered for us, that if we put fish in say, October, are they gonna make it to the next season? Or are they gonna die because the water gets cold, or some other,
We could check it out.
you know, I mean, no, that's,
Check it out.
no, but those
I
are all
think they have to go
questions.
down
Yeah.
6
Yeah.
feet for trout, someone told me.
Pardon me?
The trout has to go down and have a hole at least 7 feet in the wintertime.
Gentleman at
Survive.
Cold Spring Harbor, Steve DeSimone, was
Mhm.
incredibly helpful in this, because I'd also asked him about the reproductive abilities of stocked fish. And the answer was not definitive, but he did say that they're not very likely to reproduce, especially the bigger they get, as far as, or maybe, yeah, if the trout is smaller when it's stocked, and they do have holdovers, that if it does last a few seasons, it would have a higher percentage of reproducing, but if it's already an 11 or 12-inch fish, it would have less. And I'm not a scientist by any stretch, but this was
Relay.
something that he made a comment to me, and you know, he's saying it was $2.75 in dollars for an 8-inch fish, and about $4 for an 11 to 12-inch fish. So I just kind of wanted to get an idea, and one of the questions was the budget, and then also you know, private fundraising for, is that something doable for
Probably
the
is.
trustees, that money could be directed to you for this program?
Yeah, I mean, if I knew, say, in the spring when we were ordering the fish, and I knew I had $5,000 on top of what we had already invested, I would just order those extra fish. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I mean, the only limit to the fish is our funding. So, yeah, and then we could, instead of putting them in 7 or 8 or 10 ponds, we could put them in maybe 12 or 15 ponds, because I try to spread it out a little bit, get some fish in a pond that someone doesn't fish all the time, so they can get a little bigger, maybe they could reproduce.
Yeah, and perhaps, again, a conversation that we had with this gentleman regarding the ponds frozen and everything in March. If the budget and the orders go in, say, November, or perhaps just changing the timing of your budget and the order, I'm quite confident, considering they are stocking ponds across the entire island, that they would work on that timing for a post-freeze and the safety of the stocking as to when they go in, that the fish would survive.
Bless you.
Again, pardon me, God bless you, just considering that, if possible, when you order, and so it's ready to go in March if we have a mild winter, and that's more doable. And part of all this, what I was thinking, what drove a lot of it too, is you know, a lot of towns and villages, you know, they kind of celebrate the opening day of trout season with kids, and, you know, I know Belmont has their pre-fishing day, and obviously that's a giant lake and all that, but I don't know, I like to encourage more kids to get outdoors and to be stewards of our lakes and ponds and bays. You know, as a coach and a dad, I just find nature probably the greatest example on how to teach about life, and primarily that I feel incredibly strongly about, as I'm sure everyone in this room feels about being stewards of our community, our ponds, teaching them everything from just leaving with more garbage than you came with, and releasing fish properly, and it's okay to harvest properly, all of that balance, instead of one side or far other.
I'd rather see him engaged in that than video games.
Without a doubt, interesting, as I was speaking here 5 days ago about open space, this kind of ties into, you know, encouraging more kids. I don't know how many dads come up to me and say, like, can you teach my kid how to fish? Can you take him underwater? Because we never catch anything. So, I mean, just again, these are things that I feel as it will benefit the community as a whole. And if we could respectfully reconsider the way we're approaching the timing of the stockings, early spring or fall, and perhaps, you know, fundraising. I think it's a kind of a field. I'm a financial advisor by trade. Apparently there's some wealthy people out here that we could, you know, pull on some heartstrings there and see if we can get some more funding either, directly, I don't know how that would work, directly to the trustees, or?
Well, we're working on a program for Osprey right
Osprey,
now, so
yeah.
we're trying to do a similar type of a project
We
with
could do
Osprey.
it, we could do it like that, or
Since
we
the
might be
Ospreys
able
would eat the
to.
trout we're stocking.
See, it's a circle of life. This is what I'm learning about the circle of life now.
Yeah.
But,
Hi, Kenneth Morse. I own Tight Lines Tackle in Sag Harbor. We'll be moving my business to the village 2024. Anyway, I live on Big Fresh Pond. I have for many, many years. When I first moved onto Big Fresh Pond, Peter Corwith was a trustee. Peter Corwith was an avid outdoorsman, if you knew him. He was a hunter, he was a freshwater fisherman, he was a saltwater fisherman. Him and his family really were avid outdoors people. And I know Peter took it upon himself to take the stocking program under his wing, and he took it very, very seriously. He got the orders in early, and I saw pictures of him throwing trout out of the net into the air, and in an effort to keep his soul alive and his spirit, I think we should take this to that level again. We should bring that effort back.
Well, there was,
I used to catch a lot of trout. I caught one 4 years ago with my daughter, but it's been many, many, many years, and I'd like to see that effort brought back again. I will do any fundraising I can to help with that effort.
well, we got a good chain of communication going on, and we have kind of a template, because we were working on this on the Osprey. So let us look into the issues that you brought forth relative to the timing and whatnot, the ordering. I'm sure Eddie can make a couple phone
the
calls.
orderings of, we already had, I believe, conversations, or last week. Lisa, did we contact the fish stocking people last week? I remember.
We did not, no.
I know I talked
We
to,
were,
Going to.
I know I talked to either Jessica or you about it.
Well,
It's on our list.
yeah,
Yeah,
regardless.
believe me, it's on my radar.
Right, so
Yeah.
let's do that, so then you can find out about some of this other that he brought up. And then let's take a look at, we can talk to Mark
Yeah.
about if the template that we utilize for the Osprey program could be adjusted to accommodate taking in donations and funding towards this. I mean, you guys are avid fishermen. The trustees, we're involved in a tremendous amount of responsibility, especially associated with fishing and keeping people out on the ocean beach and surf casting and everything else. So there are many struggles that the trustees go through, and we do the best that we can in apportioning the funds and the budget and get the most we can for everybody out of that. But when you have the ability to have this other dynamic stepping into the equation, well, that kind of changes things around. So I welcome it. Let us make some calls. Let us take a look at the template. I know how to reach both of you.
And can I just say one other thing? In New York State, we see history repeating itself over and over and over and over again. I would really like to see that stop, where we don't have to do this each season. Make the phone calls and call you guys and say, hey, what's going on? The
Yeah,
idea, we'd really like to get something
it's
more
funny because
definitive.
it's funny.
Since Fred Habermeyer left, I've been handling it, and we've had stocking done every single year.
I think its timing is the biggest
Well,
issue, though.
the timing was trying to get a provider. We had worked with Norman Sewell. Norman, we couldn't work with this. He was taking the fish from Pennsylvania. We wanted to get a local provider. So by the time we put the RFP out, got it back, and then working with the town procurement policy, it takes, I usually start this the end of March. I started it back in February. I'm a month ahead this year. Or we are.
That's one aspect, but it's funny you mentioned that. History repeating itself. Because I was saying the same thing earlier today over other issues that the trustees are facing that are hitting at the soul of the actual framework of our community, well beyond fish stocking. And it's just the same exact thing that you brought up, because there's a lot more going on, okay, that affect, what you see as the quality of life for yourselves and your families, and even greater than that, the future generation. And it boils down to exactly what you're talking about. It's history again, repeating itself over things, but the reality is, just like the scallop that's our seal, it's always a struggle for survival for the trustees. So I think, I appreciate you coming here and bringing this. It's a huge responsibility, a lot of work. Eddie can make a couple phone calls. We can see how we can adjust the template of what we started here on the Osprey. We know how to reach both of you gentlemen, and we can figure out how to work together.
One further thought, if I may, and this may be a little out of the box thinking, but perhaps a conversation with Fred Thiel regarding the CPF, because the parameters of the CPF obviously have changed a little bit with water quality, and there may be a discussion to be had regarding tying this in with CPF funds. Again, maybe outside of the box, but I always feel it's worth the conversation.
Yeah, it's a good thought. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Kevin.
All right.
I will give you guys an update as soon as I have a chance, probably the end of the week here.
Greatly
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
it.
Let's
Thank you.
go to next on the agenda, which is public hearings. All right, so we have the first one. Is this yours, Eddie?
Yes.
Okay, let me check.
Notice of public hearing to amend the Blue Book A 340, amending the management and products of waters of the town of Southampton, Article XIX, Section 92, aquaculture, deployment of equipment.
Okay, I'll second the motion, open a public hearing.
Okay?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Our counsel, Joe Lombardo, would
Yes,
like to...
good afternoon. Joseph Lombardo, Special Counsel to the Trustees. The purpose of this public hearing is to amend the Blue Book, to amend the new regulations that we put in regarding aquaculture, and specifically the status of the equipment in the event that the DEC were to say that a body of water where there was aquaculture going on was temporarily uncertified because of conditions. We changed it at the request when it was brought to our attention by the Bayman. Trustee Warner and I worked on this, and basically the change will be that all activity will cease once the DEC uncertifies an area for the duration of that uncertification. Once it's recertified, activities will recommence. And if there's anything that's involving a long-term closure where the DEC would possibly require movement, removal, and replacement, we're going to let basically the DEC's guidelines control how we use aquaculture in that particular area. The original that we had said they had to remove the gear within 72 hours of the declaration. A little overbroad, and happy to make the change.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. Anybody else in the public or on Zoom that would like to be involved in the public hearing specifically to this topic? Is anybody there, Charles? Any hands up?
Zoomers.
No Zoomers. And there's nobody here.
So I think we need to amend something, correct, Joe? As far
Yes.
as-
Well, you would close the hearing,
Yep.
and you have a notice of adoption resolution later on in the meeting to deal with this.
Okay. All right.
You making a motion?
Motion to close? Yes.
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Pell. All in favor?
All right.
Aye. Okay, that public hearing is closed. This one here's too, Edward.
Notice of hearing amendment, Blue Book 348, amending the management and products of water of the town of Southampton. Article VII, Section 47, permits required, electrical.
Second to open it.
Seconded by Trustee Pell. All in favor? Aye. The public hearing is now open. I see Special Counsel Joe
Yes.
Lombardo at the
Yes.
podium.
Speaking on behalf of, for the board, the Joseph Lombardo, Special Counsel. This amendment basically amends the Blue Book requirement. The Blue Book originally required, the way it was written actually, that you needed an electrical permit for any activity or construction that was going to involve electrical components, getting a permit from the town of Southampton. Town of Southampton doesn't issue permits in the incorporated villages. This merely extends that requirement of the applicant to get the appropriate electrical permit from the jurisdiction where the property is located. If there's an IM with the town of Southampton, where they would handle something like that, then they'd have to get it from the town, as opposed to any village authority that might be lacking. But it's just to require uniformity across the town.
Yep, it's housekeeping on that, so.
Okay. Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment relative to this public hearing? Anybody on Zoom relative to this one, Charles? Nobody.
All right, well, I'd like to close it then.
Okay.
Okay. Motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Pell. All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
That public hearing is closed. We've come to the public portion part of our meeting. Is there anybody here that would like to address the board for 3 minutes on some trustee-related matter, or on Zoom for that matter, which I don't think we have any Zoomers? Nobody is looking to address the board in public portion.
Actually,
You have somebody?
yeah.
They gotta come on.
What do you want me to do it for? This is from North Sea Fire Department. They're looking to relocate their fireboat to Willie's Pond, to our dock there. I think we might have one empty slip coming up. We won't know until March 15th. I'm also gonna check with our bay constables, see if all three of them do renew their slips, if we could fit a fourth one in there. The boat overall length is 30 feet. That's with the outboards tilted up. 30 feet, 32 feet with outboards tilted up, 10-foot beam on it, 10-7 beam
All
on
right, so
it.
we're gonna have to look at this from a logistic
Yeah.
perspective.
I just want to give it out so people know that we're looking at it.
Right, so, okay. Anything else? Nothing else. Okay, so that being said, we can move off to the applications for permits. Board of Trustees hereby waives a public hearing on the following applications because it has been determined that the following projects do not raise a significant degree of public interest. Public input is needed to aid the decision-making process, or that process is already taking place through the work session. First one is 2023-55, modification and renewal application, second renewal for the Shinnecock Shores Association, tax map 900-363-2-42. It's a maintenance dredge project of the canals and Shinnecock Shores. I recommend its approval.
Second.
Seconded, Trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
Got Trustee Resolution 2023-56. That's a First Coastal, application of Carol Kwiatkowski, 11 Romana Drive, Hampton Bays, New York, Suffolk County Tax Map 900-257-3-13. It's a project that we worked on extensively in work session, and I recommend its approval.
Seconded.
Seconded, Trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2023-38, application of 30 Allison Lane LLC, 30 Allison Lane, Hampton Bays, New York, Suffolk County Tax Map 900-374-1-22, body of water, Dug Canal in Shinnecock Bay West, Foster's Creek. We discussed this at work session. I believe it's compliant to all that we need to approve it, so I recommend its approval.
Second.
Seconded, Trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2023-57, application of Christopher Dunlap, 7 Trents Lane, Hampton Bays, Suffolk County Tax Map number 900-347-1-11.5, body of water, Eastern Shinnecock Bay. We worked on this in a work session, had a couple public hearings on it. It passes Blue Book, what we need in it, so I recommend its approval.
Second.
Seconded, Trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
I'm going to abstain on that one because I have continued concern about the presence of eelgrass in this area.
One abstention. Motion carries.
Application for, Trustee Resolution 2023-58, application for Ernest Trillo, 8 Canal Way, Hampton Bays, Suffolk County, Tax Map 900-322-2-7, body of water, Shinnecock Bay West, Smiths Creek. We worked on this in work session. It meets all the criteria, so I recommend its approval.
Did you say 18 Canal Way?
18 Canal
Yeah,
Way?
you said 8, but you
Yeah,
meant
it's
18.
eight.
Oh,
You said 8, but it's 18 Canal Way.
Oh, so 18 Canal Way. So
Okay.
recommend its approval.
Second.
Seconded, Trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
You said it's 8.
Sorry.
Okay.
Trustee Resolution 2023-59. Application of MH Ocean View LLC, 30 Ocean View Drive, Shinnecock Hills, Suffolk County Tax Map 900-271-1-41, Body of Water, Shinnecock Bay. We worked on this in work session. We had our attorney look at it, so I recommend its approval.
Second.
Seconded trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2023-60, application of Barlovento LLC, 23 Wheaton Way, Watermill, New York, Suffolk County Tax Map 900-116-1-12.6, Mecox Bay. This is for an elevated walkway out to Mecox Bay. We had an advisory letter from the Conservation Board, and I would like to recommend the approval.
I'll second that.
Seconded trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2023-61, this is for a modification application for permit number FXD 00032, Project 287 LLC, 4585 Noyak Road, Suffolk County Tax Map 900-24-3-31, Body of Water, Ligony Creek. This is for a modification to the permit for a floating dock, and I'd like to recommend its approval.
I'll second it.
Seconded trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye. Trustee Resolution 2023-62, this is for a second renewal for permit GP 000-211, Robert and Diane Cummings, 250 Jobs Lane, Bridgehampton, Suffolk County Tax Map 900-134-1-43.2, Body of Water, Swan Creek. This is for continued common reed management using selective cutting. I'd like to recommend its approval.
Second.
Seconded trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye. Trustee Resolution 2023-63, this is for a third renewal for the permit number GP 000-154, 37 Glover Street LLC, 37 Glover Street, Village of Sag Harbor, Suffolk County Tax Map 903-3-1-12, Body of Water, Upper Sag Harbor Cove. This is for the third renewal for an elevated catwalk. I'd like to recommend its approval.
Second.
Seconded trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I'll handle
Okay.
trustee Parrish's form. Trustee Resolution 2023-64, it's a first renewal of permit GP 000-351, WHB 43 Shore Road LLC, tax map 900-376-3-27. Recommend its renewal.
Second.
Seconded trustee Pell, all in favor?
Aye.
He also has 2023-65, renewal application for GP 000-369 Richard Sands, tax map number 905-10-5-33.2. I recommend its renewal.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Who seconded?
I did.
Everybody did, it seems.
Who's a tie?
Trustee Resolution 2023-66, it's coastal, it's a modification and renewal, second renewal. Joseph Carney, GP 000-221, 9 Apicook Point Lane, tax map 900-382-230.7. Recommend its modification and renewal.
Second.
Seconded trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2023-67, it's a second renewal for permit GP 000-262 for the Fisher Organization, tax map number 900-123-1-68. Recommend its renewal.
Second.
Seconded trustee Welker, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You can take the next one,
Yep.
Edward.
Trustee Resolution 2022-348. This is aquaculture program sites with GPS coordinates. It's been discussed a lot, and there was a few questions. I think we've answered most, if not all, the questions. This is to allow the aquaculture program to get up and running with actual coordinates of sites that we vetted through GPS. Working with Cornell Cooperative Extension, I know the college did have some questions about it, about the sites. They wanted us to move the sites out of the shellfish sanctuaries into other parts of the bay, which I think would be very much counterproductive. And losing the spirit of working with the baymen and all the other people on the water that work there. These sites are already off limits to commercial and recreational harvest, and utilizing them for aquaculture program I think would be good, not taking up more certified waters that the fishermen and local people could use. So I recommend its approval.
I have a question. I'm concerned about moving forward, given that the college's concerns, I don't feel, have been adequately addressed. And I think that being that we've had a very amenable cooperative arrangement with the college, they have had great success with the SHRP program. I think that even though we are looking to move this forward, that it would be foolhardy on our part to move forward without there being a complete agreement with this.
Well, I think what they want is just to pick this all up and move it out of the sanctuary. I know if we do that and we try to choose other grounds outside, that there's gonna be a lot of resistance from the baymen and other people in the town up there. I'm just trying to work with, within the sanctuary, work within certified waters that are already closed. It doesn't interfere with navigation. It's the goal of the sanctuaries in the whole SHRPS program was to enhance the population so that you have more shellfish to filter the water to make a better water quality. So we would just be adding shellfish, or the aquaculturists would be adding their product into this area. We cited the proposed areas outside of where the shellfish is already on the bottom, so I don't see a problem with it.
I disagree, I respectfully. And perhaps we could have a meeting with them to discuss this, because as far as I know, it's been emails back and forth. And I think that given how hard that you've worked on this and how long, I think that this one stumble in it is not worth sacrificing everything.
Well, I feel if they're that adamant about not doing this, why couldn't they come in person and sit here and discuss it with the board in open session? We had Bart Burke come in, we've had Cornell come in, we've had everybody else come in here and discuss it, in a meeting.
Did you not, if I recall asking questions specifically about this, if the two could coexist harmoniously, I think that the answer was yes. And I think it was just a matter of shifting things around within the site. Has that been done?
Yes, it has been done.
So then that should have been addressed if you shifted off of where they specifically planted, or do we have like miscommunication breakdown? Because it seems like you did move that around, and I did ask, and I believe the answer was that it could work together in the same area. You had to move it. It did get moved.
We sent the proposed coordinates over to the college through James, our environmental analyst. They looked at them, did a review, said these are gonna, work, these are not gonna work. So we did move a couple of the areas over so that we can make them, not interfere with the college's shellfish that they put down and still do the aquaculture.
Yeah, they were shifted once, and they still had issues with locations.
Well, my understanding is they just didn't want the aquaculture program to take place in the sanctuary.
That I'm not sure of. I believe everyone got the correspondence. So.
If you want to contact the college and ask them to come in and come into a formal public session like this and discuss it, I'm all for that. But emails and back and forth asking us to do something, which we did do. I contacted the Cornell They said everything that we were doing was fine, because we sent them over the coordinates, and,
So this resolution has been tabled
yes.
a number
4
of times. And I know there was discussion about the appropriateness of sharing the space. I believe that was okay. I know there was a request to shift some things around within that. I thought that was
It was
you know,
done.
done. Okay, so I thought that we have gone beyond this at this point in time. You're saying we're not?
No,
So-
I don't think it has been
You don't-
equitably
Okay, so we're not sure,
resolved.
basically. You want to make sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought I was sure, that's why I was moving forward, but if one of the board members has a reservation, why don't we contact the college and have them come in at the next meeting
Well,
and...
we had a public hearing on this, right?
Yes.
And they had a very opportunity to come and speak up about this in the
Yes, they
public
did.
hearing.
That's what I said, we've had
So
a
you're
lot of
gonna
course-
make something a special thing because they could not make a public hearing? Then you have to reopen the public hearing. I'm not gonna let someone talk about it once we close the hearing, about the vote, because it's not fair to the people who came to a public hearing.
I mean, we've gotten no resistance except for the college, and they asked us to move some of the aquaculture sites over in different areas, which we did to accommodate their concerns. I thought we did exactly what they had asked us to do.
Can I ask, is
Mark?
special counsel involved with this?
Yes.
We had special counsel on this one, so I just want to get some clarification, because I want to see, the whole concept, in my view, was that, everybody was kind of working together. We were going to maximize the spot and space that we've already taken, out of the inventory of what can be utilized for commercial harvest or recreational harvest for the purposes of, shellfish thriving and water quality. So, and I was under the understanding that these two things could exist harmoniously.
When we had one of our meetings, we did have a Zoom attendance by somebody from Stony Brook University, and they were enthusiastically in support. Then the following week, my understanding is, they then contacted us and said, oh, no, you can't do it. So they had input, they were for it. Maybe there's another part of Stony Brook that's not happy with it, and they're bowing to that authority, or superiority maybe in the issue. But the bottom line is that you've held this program up all this additional time to try to get an accommodation with the college. You've made the changes. I'm now beginning to believe that there's nothing that we're going to be able to do that's going to satisfy the college. So it's either hold the program up, or I would recommend pass the resolution if you're going to pass it. If there's an area that the college has an issue with, let them get in touch with the board and see if you can work some sort of workaround. But for the whole program to be held up, when the whole program isn't going to be contingent on spawner sanctuaries, doesn't make sense.
With all due respect, this is not a black and white decision, and there are multiple gray areas within it. So in order for us to move forward with all in agreement, if it means taking one more meeting where we ask them to come in and discuss it, I don't think that's an out of line request.
I think Ann's point is well taken. If, in fact, the college has changed their original position that they made clear during the first public meeting, and give me a second, Joe, before you say anything. I think it's probably a good idea to at least clarify their position on the record to avoid any kind of litigation down the road where somebody feels that their harvesting area is being impinged upon. I know, and you're correct, normally I wouldn't advise a second public hearing on an
So we
issue
have to
like this.
reopen it or get a no public hearing, because we should not talk about it unless we have a public hearing, because it's not right.
You're 100% correct.
So then that may be the direction that we have to go with this.
Again, with all due respect, it looks like you're giving an outside party veto power over your program. It's
I
not
agree
their
with
job
you.
to have
I
it,
agree
it's
with
your
you, Joe.
job to be the stewards, and if you've determined that these areas are adequate and permissible, then you should let your program go through. If you want to have another public hearing, we know how long that will take and all the delays that will come, potentially. That's, again, there was a sense of urgency, I was told, that we needed to get these things
Right,
done.
people were very excited about this program, and I was under the understanding that it could work harmoniously together, and you can make adjustments, and, special counsel is correct. It's our responsibility as the stewards to get the information and make these decisions. I didn't realize it was that far off. I thought those adjustments were made, is what I thought.
Myself too, and they have plenty of opportunities to come in and speak about it.
It's Trustee Warner's resolution.
I got the correspondence from them, we moved the areas, we separated the areas so they weren't right on top of each other. I think we've done everything as far as the proper way to set up an aquaculture program. I think it should be adopted as is right now, and if the college has any questions, let them pick out each one of the sites that they have reservations about, and if it's a big problem and they can't work around it, maybe we can adjust and make some more sites.
If we go forward the way it is right now, it will not be a unanimous vote. I'm aware of that.
Well, we can have a roll call. If you want it to go forward, Ed, it's all up to you.
It's up to you, Ed, if you want.
I want Bill Parrish to be here too, so, and being that he isn't here right now, that's my one reservation, because I would like everybody on the board to be in favor of it. I don't want it to be an abstention, an absence and stuff like that. So I'd like to table it until the next meeting, at which time we can have correspondence with the college, and we can have a full board to give their thoughts and concerns.
I respect that.
Thank you, Ed.
On the correspondence, is the public hearing still open, or is it closed?
The public's
Closed, long closed.
So how are we gonna have correspondence on it if it's closed?
I'm gonna ask him to come in and discuss it at the next meeting.
I disagree with that.
In
I think
public.
that you have to reopen it, have a public hearing, because you can't talk about it, because we already had a public
Well-
hearing to discuss everything. It's not right for the people who took the time to come to the public hearing and speak. If it's wrong or right about whatever we decided on, but those people came to the public hearing. Now, we closed it, and someone else wants to come and speak for it or against it, it's not right. It's not fair to the other people
Yeah,
who
I think
made the
there's-
time.
There's two ways you can do it. You do it the way that Trustee Pell is describing, which is a good way to do it, or as you have in the past, public meetings that's closed, public hearing, you've accepted, paper documents of people's positions, usually 2-3 weeks afterwards. So you could exercise your discretion there as well, but either way is fine. And you're right, it's just I know this is much longer period.
This is
This is 3 months.
This is a much longer period, and
That's
I,
way too long.
quite frankly, I know there was
I
adjustments
like
that
the
were
college.
needed.
I like the college, but
I
I have to be fair to everyone.
No, I'm trying to,
I believe that we asked if they could exist together, and the initial discussion that I heard was it absolutely could exist together. And I know there was a request to make some deviation in some of the locations to get off of the top, exactly over the top, and I thought that was done.
it was done.
And
so-
then there was a subsequent
That I didn't know about.
correspondence
Okay, that I wasn't aware of, I thought,
that has not been, to my knowledge, addressed.
okay.
No, I feel it's our underwater land, and we should take it and manage it the best we can for everybody, not just for
Well-
certain individuals.
So
But I
it's your
will-
resolution.
I
If you-
want to table it until our next meeting.
Okay, it's up to you, Ed, whatever you want.
Trustee Parrish isn't here.
Okay,
All right?
so
Okay.
you have a motion to table it for another meeting?
Yep.
Second.
Okay, so seconded by Trustee Welker. All in favor?
All right.
I abstain.
Trustee Pell abstains. I will grant your tabling for the respective trustee parish, but I will say this, we need to have this resolved
Yes.
at this next meeting,
Yeah.
one way or the other, okay? Because there's a lot of work's gone into this,
Yep.
okay?
It's a good program. It's a good thing.
It's absolutely a good thing.
Okay. Who's up next?
You,
Me?
yeah, bottom of page 16.
I lost my page, Scott.
Where are we?
Page 16, bottom of
Page
page.
16.
Just trustee
Oh, yeah,
resolution.
2023-25, agreements, contracts, and leases. Oh, here's another one. This is authorizing retaining the professional services of Robert Young, Ph.D., for consulting and review of the Living Shoreline projects on Dune Road in West Hampton.
I can speak to this if you wish.
Okay?
If you wish. I after discussion with the board, spoke with Dr. Young, who has been an expert, scientific expert for years for the board. He is a coastal geologist. I explained to him that we had interviewed a living shoreline expert who is a coastal engineer. He is fine with our proceeding with alternate scientific expert in this position, but he looks forward to a continuing relationship with the trustees in years to come.
Okay. So let's get this done. So 16,
52, I think,
17,
25.
all right. So we're denying, withdrawing this. I'm going to make a motion to withdraw this resolution at this point in time. So seconded, Trustee Welker. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That resolution is withdrawn. Edward?
Trustee Resolution 2023-68, notice of public hearing to amend the Blue Book 38340, amending the management and products of the waters of the town of Southampton, Article XIX, Section 9, agriculture deployment equipment. Our attorney, Joe Lombardo, has given us a synopsis of what we're looking at, so I recommend its approval.
Second.
Seconded, Trustee Welker. All in favor?
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2023-69, notice of adoption of amendment of Blue Book A340, Article 7, Section 47, requiring electrical permits, whereas the public hearing was held on Monday, March 6th at 1 p.m. in the meeting room, Town Hall, which time any and all persons either for or against the amendment were heard.
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Pell. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Trustee 2023-70, recall amend 2023 TRUS-4, whereas the town trustee resolution 2023-4A adopted February 13th, whereas in 23rd, the GL number listed for the boat signs were incorrect, should have been GL 01-99-8700-01-6426-000, not GL SN-99-8790-006420-00.
Second.
Seconded, Trustee Welker. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, got Trustee Resolution 2023-71 under agreements, contracts, and leases. I'm going to recall and amend Resolution 2023-TRUS-10, whereas the Southampton Town Trustees Resolution 2023-10 adopted January 9th stated funding shall not exceed $5,000 to retain legal services by Con & Con on matters related to Stroud versus the Village of West Hampton Dunes, and where the Southampton Town Trustees need to increase the budget from $5,000 to $15,000. For a second to...
Second.
Seconded, Trustee Warner.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2023-72, agreement, contracts, lease, and trustees. Authorized payment for professional service of Council B. Ready, Fishby, Harris, and Dovin LLP for 2023.
Second.
Seconded, Trustee Warner. All in favor? Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2023-73 to authorize retaining the professional services of coastal engineer Amy Bredis for consulting and review of the Living Shorelines project on Dune Road in West Hampton. Whereas the Board of Trustees would like to utilize the services of coastal engineer Amy Bredis for review of living shoreline projects on Dune Road, whereas the Board of Trustees Resolution 20-23-1 requires an authorizing resolution for any expenditure in excess of $1,000, whereas Amy Bredis has proposed the following rates. plan review, $100 per hour, site visit, $120 per hour, site travel, $200 per trip. Therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorize the retaining of professional services from coastal engineer Amy Burns in an amount not to exceed the budget. Like a second?
Second, trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
Finally done. Trustee Powell?
2023-74, Budget and Financing, authorize the purchase of navigation aids, buoys. Whereas the Board of Trustees require navigation aids for the upcoming summer season and for safety, whereas the Board of Trustees obtained 2 quotes for navigation aids, Amazon and Washburn. Whereas the Washburn Inc. was the lowest responsible bidder with a quote of $4,380, whereas the Board of Trustees Resolution 2020-1 requires authorized resolution for any expenditure more than exceed $1,000. Now where there's be. Resolution Board of Trustees authorized the payment of Wash Marine Products, Inc. The source of funding should be GL 01-99-87 00-01-6426-000, amount not to exceed $4,380. Lisa, this comes out of the town side?
Anytime you see the 0199, that's town.
I know, but I just want to make sure that
Yeah.
people
Yeah,
know
that
that
was
the
gonna say.
town,
Absolutely.
the town has to pay for the navigation equipment now. Looking for a second for this one.
Well, they should have been paying for it.
All
the
along.
whole time.
Long, I agree with you, Ed.
Second.
Seconded, trustee Welker, all in favor?
All right.
Nice.
2023-75, purchasing, authorize the purchase from William Law Book Company for minute books and paper, whereas the town trustees are need 8 years of minute books and paper, whereas the town trustee resolution TR23-TRUS-1 requires authorized resolution and the expenditure of $1,000. Whereas the William Law Book has given a quote for minute book and paper amount of $3,000, whereas the funder of the minute book will come from the trustee other LG SN 99-879-0-00-6420-000. Now therefore be it. And the purchase of minute books, papers for the year of 2015 through 2021 and 23, the amount of $3,000.
Second.
Seconded, trustee Welker, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
2023-76, Budget and Finance, authorized payment to reimburse the town of Southampton for box license, whereas the town trustees of part service ordered Box Inc. for the license term of April 30, 23 to April 30, 2024, whereas the recommended trustee treasurer to reimburse the town of Southampton amount of $502.76 for a box license. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees authorized payment to the town of Southampton in the amount of $502.76. Therefore be it further resolved that source funding should from the town trustees other GL SN-990-8790-00-6420-000, the amount not to exceed $502.76.
Question on the motion. What is this, please? What's box license?
This is Box Inc. It's only Stephanie, who is our FOIL officer, and Jessica have it,
a
so
program.
that they can drop large files into.
It's a program.
Dropbox.
They have a lot of licenses, so we need to pay for them.
Okay,
Seconded,
thank you.
all in favor?
Aye.
Who seconded?
I did.
Scott did. 2023-77, resolution. Resolution to authorize the purchase order encumbers for 2022 to 2023. Upon recommend of the Comptroller, the Board of Trustees hereby approves the following department of 2022 and 2023, the purchase order of SNSS 0077, encumbered to the amount of $546.42.
Second.
Seconded, trustee Welker, all in favor?
Resolution 2023-78, resolution to authorize the purchase order of encumbered for 2022 to 23. Upon recommendation of the Comptroller, the Board of Trustees hereby approves the following department 2022 to year 2023 to purchase order SN 220097, income of the amount of $7,100 and no more, no further.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2023-79, resolution to author purchase order income of 2022 to 23 again. Upon recommendation of the comptroller, the Board of Trustees hereby approves the following department of 2022 to 2023 to purchase order number SN-9987-90-006425-0000, income in the amount of $619.50.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Budget and Finance, 2023-80, warrant 40 of 2023 for the trustees. As per recommendation, the review of the comp control, the following vendor payment warrant for be approved of $39,620.04. Order bail rentals, $3,093.28. Be Ready, $7,918.75. Card member, $2,879.21. Call ahead, $50. General code, 3840. Governor Connect is $753.93. Home Depot credit card, $854.47. Joseph Lovato, $2,300. Lopa Equipment, $102.95. Riverhead Building, $810.84. Town of Southampton is $19,632. WB Mason, $513.30. William Lawbrook, $672.91. A total of $39,620.04.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'd like permission to walk on a resolution.
You want a resolution?
Second.
Seconded by trustee Welker. All in favor?
Aye.
We have a resolution. Now I'd like to read the resolutions authorizing the opening of the Mecox oyster dredge season to 6 weeks and commencing the season on March 15, 2023. Whereas the trustees of the Freeholders and Commonalty of the Town of Southampton annually open the oyster beds located in Mecox Bay on April 1st, and whereas many of the oyster areas in Mecox need to be manually worked due to their being overgrown and clumped up, and whereas the working of the area by Bayman will benefit the oyster population through a turning over of silted beds, as well as providing an increase in the area that young oysters may be set in. Now therefore be it resolved that the trustees do hereby announce that the dredge season for the harvesting of oysters in Mecox Bay will now open on March 15, 2023, and close on April 26, 2023.
Second.
And be it further resolved that the harvest limits will remain as originally set by the board. That's the motion.
Second.
Seconded, trustee Pell. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Abstain.
I think it's a very good thing that we do this every year.
Edward has abstained.
Did we say that this is the request of the Baymen's Association?
It is at the request of the
The
Baymen's
Bayman
Association.
They emailed me a letter a couple of days
And
ago.
we work
That's-
with them all the time on this sort of a project. We're just making some adjustments here that make better sense.
Yep.
As it was pointed out, we are the stewards of our underwater lands, and that's what we're trying to do. I know we've had a lot of discussions today throughout work session and this general session, and I'm respectful of the time. And we still do have executive session regarding personnel and litigation, because we didn't get to have that conversation. Does anybody, you have something?
Really quickly. Mecox is being opened today, and Sag Pond is extremely high as well and will be open tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Does anybody have anything that's absolutely pressing before we go into the executive sessions? Because I am mindful of your time. We do have some things to discuss. It was carried over from litigation at the beginning we were supposed to discuss, and it also. That being said, nobody's speaking up. That's fine. We've done a lot, determined a lot. I thank you all for that. I would like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting for today and go into executive session.
Second.
Purpose.
For the purposes of discussing litigation and personnel issues.
Second.
Seconded by trustees Pell and trustees Welker. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, have a nice day, everybody.